I have a t-shirt that I sleep in. It may be a little revealing for the preacher to the church, but it is a wonderful t-shirt. I've had it for about 13 years, and it is worn out. And it has holes in it. And I have acquired another shirt to sleep in. And occasionally I put it on. Usually before I go to sleep, I go get my old one and put it back on and go to sleep. As long as I have my old t-shirt, I'll never learn to sleep in my new one. I don't know how you do things in your life. Sometimes as long as you have the old, you'll never move on to the new. It's comfortable, it feels right, it sort of fits. Maybe you have something in your life that's old and comfortable, but you really need to let it go. You really need to put it down. Now, I came by my traits honestly. I have a picture of me at 6 years old, coming home from school, standing under the clothesline, holding onto my blanket, sucking my thumb, because my mom had washed it while I was at school. I attached to cloth objects, evidently. I don't know. Finally, I let go of it. I have no idea when. But eventually, you turn loose of those things. This morning's focus is very simple. The newness of Christ is not fully realized if the old man is not laid aside. The newness of Christ is not fully realized if the old man is not laid aside. It's absolutely certain. I want you to name someone with whom you have... Well, wait a minute. Don't say this out loud. So, I want you to name someone with whom you have trouble getting along. You can write their name down if you want to, but don't say it. Someone with whom you have trouble getting along. Got them in mind there? I can almost guarantee you that I can convince you that the person you have the most trouble getting along with is your former self. It is the old man that you're supposed to be letting go of. But you have rented him a room downstairs. You're letting him hang around. And every now and then you let him put something on the grocery list that you shouldn't buy. Occasionally you allow him to run the remote control. And you'll watch things you ought not to watch. Sometimes you let him in the truck with you, and that song comes on the radio. You forget that Jesus is sitting next to you, listening to how you're going to treat that girl. If Jesus is there, what song do you listen to? Do you change that channel or buy a new, well, I guess, download some new music? If you remember that Jesus is listening, it sort of begins to change. Paul is taking us there in Ephesians chapter 4. Verse 17 through 24 this morning. And he's going to describe to us the unworthy walk. Now, he tells us in chapter 4, verse 1, that we are to walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which we have been called. He has described for 3 chapters our worthy calling. Tells us, now I want you to walk like you believe that. But here in 17 through 19, he's going to describe an unworthy walk. Because he wants us to be able, just in case you didn't know what a good walk looked like, I want to show you what a bad walk looks like. I want to show you what is unworthy of you now that you have enlisted to follow after Christ. So this I say, therefore, and affirm together with the Lord, that you walk no longer, just as the Gentiles also walk, in the futility of their mind, being darkened in their understanding, excluded from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them, because of the hardness of their heart, And they, having become callous, have given themselves over to sensuality for the practice of every kind of impurity with greediness. That's an unworthy walk. They've given themselves over to sensuality. Now, the way to say this is they decided to do what felt good to them, gave themselves over to sensuality. Because of the callousness of their heart. Isn't that amazing? Having become callous, they got hard enough in their heart that they said, I'm just going to do what I want to do, and God's going to have to like it. You ever heard someone say that? I've heard it a time or two. I've just decided what feels good, and God's just going to have to like it. God doesn't have to do what you think God has to do. God is still God. He is still in charge and in control. And He has this sensual walk that Satan lays out for us that is based on how we feel and the senses that we have. It's tactile, and sometimes it's exciting, and sometimes it is sensual. All those words come there, don't they? He says, you've become callous so that you're going to do what you feel like doing. That's an unworthy walk. And you're going to have the practice of every kind of impurity with greediness. Did you ever head down one of those roads of sin and suddenly the sin you were on wasn't enough? You needed a little more. The sin then wasn't quite enough and you needed a little more. It'll happen with pornography. It'll happen with drugs. It'll happen with Dr. Pepper. You can have it everywhere, right? I mean, no one is immune to this. What is it that I just got to have a little more? That's Satan working on our senses, callousing our hearts over, saying, it's not going to hurt you too bad. That's an unworthy walk. And so now he shifts us to our transitional journey. He said, I want you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which you have been called. Here's an unworthy walk. Don't live the way you feel. Don't do the thing that you want to do. He said, I want you to think about your transitional journey here. We shift down to verse 20 and follow. But you did not learn Christ in this way. We're ready for a slide, Doyle. You didn't learn Christ in this way. You didn't learn Christ in saying, I'm going to do what feels good to me. You didn't learn Christ in saying, just a little more sin is all I need. You didn't learn Christ in this way. If indeed you have heard Him and have been taught in Him, just as truth is in Jesus. Just as truth is in Jesus. That, in reference to your former manner of life, you lay aside the old self, which is being corrupted in accordance to the lust of deceit, and that you be renewed in the spirit of your mind and put on the new self, which in the likeness of God has been created in righteousness and holiness of the truth. He said, when you came to Christ, I want you to know the waters of the baptistry are jealous. Well, they are very jealous. And the waters of the baptistry have soaked up and sucked up your sin, taken it away from you. And you have been made pure and clean. And you went to the baptistry and said, I'm going to die here. We don't always talk about that. That's what happens at the baptistry. I'm going to die here. And I'm going to lay aside my old man here. And I'm going to leave him in this place so I can be raised to walk in newness of life, as Ned read from Romans chapter 6. I'm going to be raised to walk in newness of life. It's not going to be like the old life. It's going to be a new life. Because my body of sin has been done away with, I don't have to be enslaved to sin anymore. I've been freed from sin. The waters of baptistry are a jealous water. God says, I want to be God in your life. And you came and said, God, I want you to be God in my life. And He says, all right. And then you say, except. And He says, wait a minute. Think of it like marriage. Kelsey and Jonathan are getting married today. That's exciting. Think about it as marriage. You walk down the aisle, stand before the preacher. Do you? Yes, I do. Do you? Yes, I do. On the way back down the aisle, he just leans over to her and says, by the way, honey, I've got a date Thursday night with Sue. It's not going to go very well. She is a jealous bride. God is a jealous God. You don't say, I'm going to give up my old man, my old ways, but I'm going to keep my little black book. I would still like to play the field. I'm going to do better with my pornography, but give me a day a month. Just one day a month on the computer is all I really need. I'll be fine. God says, no, we're married. We're committed to one another. I'm going to drink. I'm going to give control of my body over to another substance. And God says, no, wait a minute. You gave control of your body over to my spirit. I want you to be filled with the Spirit. That's what I want you to be drunk on. That's literally the language of Ephesians chapter 5. I want you to be drunk on the Spirit, so filled with the Spirit of God that He's overtaking you and consuming you, taking over your life. And you say, no, it won't hurt me. And you said, no. He says, there's no way God will accept that. He is a jealous God. He says, we are in a new relationship. Now he says, you be renewed in the spirit of your mind. You need to lay aside the old self. It's being corrupted in accordance with the lusts of deceit. Think about what that says. With you pursuing all that you can, with all that you have, that's lust of something that is deceptive. You ever been one of those mirror houses that distort your image? You just stay in there for a long time, and if you stayed long enough, you wouldn't have to really be in there too long until you forgot what you look like. You ever think of that? You'd see one of these weird warped images, and well, that's not it. I know that's not right. But before long, you could get a fairly distorted image that you say, yeah, that's me. And if you could get out and see yourself clearly, you'd realize, no, that's not you. That's the deceit of that mirror that is distorted. All Satan wants to do is take your lust and say, this isn't going to hurt you. Do what you feel like doing and deceive you with it until you begin to think that's what you look like. And God says, wait a minute. What happens in baptistry is I cleanse you completely. I totally wipe your hard drive. I make sure there's nothing left of old person in you. And I raise you to walk in newness of life. I restore you to your default condition we mentioned in class. I put you back in perfect working order. That's what he means when it's put on the new self, which in the likeness of God has been created in righteousness and holiness of the truth. Now we got the truth instead of deceit. We've got what we really look like. Here's what you really look like. Here's what your real potential is. Try to love your wife part-time. See how satisfied she is. Love your wife the way Jesus loves the church. And see how satisfied she is. See how happy she is. See how happy you are because she's so happy. It works that way. God says, I want you to know that there is the truth, the righteousness and holiness of the truth. The righteousness is being declared in a right state with God. And the holiness is set apart for His pure activity. And that is the truth. That's what you were made for. That's what Adam and Eve were made for. That's what everybody in the world has ever been made for. That's the only way God makes things is perfectly. He always intended for us to live in that perfect relationship with Him. And all Satan wants to do is introduce sin so that the relationship is tainted and we don't feel like we can live. I want you to take your best mirror and think about how you look. And then ask yourself how God sees you. How is God looking at you? What does God see when He looks in your face? First of all, you're going to have to get rid of that mirrored glass and get a spiritual eyepiece so you can see your spirit, not your outer body. Every time you look in the mirror, Satan wants you to think that you weigh 215, you're bald, and have a goatee on your face. That's what Satan wants you to think, right? He wants you to think that you're made up of the image you're looking at, and God says, wait a minute, no, I want you to see the inner person of the heart. I want you to see the righteousness and holiness of the truth. I want you to see what my Son died to create in you. He created in you a clean heart. And I want you to see that clean heart and live that life. Most of us have someone in our life that we need to get rid of. It is our former self. We keep dragging him around. Here's your take home this morning. We just keep dragging him around, letting him dictate, control. We're controlled by lust. I'm better than I used to be, but I still watch those movies I shouldn't see. I want to have control of you. Your new self is created in righteousness and holiness of the truth. That's what you're designed to look like. Our potential is so wonderful if we could learn to look like the way God designed us. If we can learn to see ourselves the way He designed us. Paul looks at the church and says, don't live like you used to, live like you ought to. God has an expectation for you. A bunch of you are going to camp this week. I want you to go with the hope and the realization, I'm going to go live like God longs for me to live. I'm going to go be God's person. You'll come back. The world will dump on you bad enough. It'll be hard enough. But I want you to give yourself over to looking like the image of Christ this week. Looking like Him. Acting and walking like Him. Oh, we'll have the illustration of this next week. 25 to 32 does that, all the way down to chapter 5, verse 2. But just think about who you're giving control to. And whether or not you're pleased with how they act. I never had a whole lot of friends, believe it or not. I was always friendly, but I never had really close friends. I hope y'all have some really close friends. One of the reasons I didn't have a lot of close friends is when they got to my house, I didn't like the way they acted. They acted in a way that oftentimes got me in trouble. They acted in a way that didn't make my life with my mom easier. And I liked living at home with my mom and things being easy. So I didn't let my friends mess that up very often. I think God would really like it if we would say, Jesus is our friend. We're going to follow Him. We're going to let Him decide what we do with our life. Father, take my life. Father, let my life be closer to You. All that aspect of molding us, shaping us. That's what we're longing for. Well, I hope you are going to camp to be molded and shaped into the image of Christ. More than that, I hope you go help shape your friends, because you're the friend that they needed, not the one they don't need. So don't be a friend your friends don't need. Be the friend they need. A friend that is there for their good. Together we stand and sing.